Excellent. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Nick, and thank you, Russell, for putting this on this morning. We're all here as salespeople, and we're all here as marketers and as business owners. I'd like you to think about something, a different approach this morning. We're all here to sell. We're all here to market. We're all here to get more customers. What I'd like you to do is to think about, just if you've got a pad and a piece of paper next to you, I'd just like you to write down the name of your best customer. Once you've wrote the name of your best customer down, I'd just like you to think through how you got to know that person, how they got to like you, and how you built up that relationship in terms of them trusting you. Okay, so just write that person's name down, and I want you to think about that person all the way through. And every time we meet each month on the sales sprint, I want you to have that person in mind. So does that person make you happy? Does that person make you money? And does that person make you proud? Do you get on with them? Do you have a good relationship with them? That best customer is who we're going to think about all the way through. There's a brilliant book called The Jelly Effect. And in The Jelly Effect, Andy Bounds talks about the afters. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to think about that best customer, because I've got a tactic that I want you to run through everything we do today. And one of the biggest actions that we're going to talk about is how we sell, because the more we sell, the more inquiries we get. The more inquiries we get, the more leads we get. The more leads we get, the more conversions we make. And the more conversions we make, the more customers we get, right? So Nick and I worked with a client. They wanted more inquiries. So they were about to spend £20,000 on radio advertising. Now that's a hell of a lot of money to spend on advertising, but they needed inquiries. They thought they needed more inquiries to get more customers. I'm going to pick up on that story later on, but just have that in mind, that £20,000 they were about to spend on advertising to get more customers. And then you've got marketing. The more we market, the more people see us. There's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's TikTok, random. There's social media. There is networking. On top of that, there's exhibitions when we used to go to them. Then there's PR, and then there's events. It's exhausting, it's confusing, it's expensive. So where do you even start? Now, one thing that is missing from here is this. Sales does, marketing does, but this is fundamentally missing. And this is a quote. If you Google customer experience, this will come up. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. So if you think about your best customer that I asked you to think about at the beginning, I want you to think about that relationship and how you make them feel every time you have interactions with them, because this is quite a powerful statement. And the reason why is because the customer needs to be at the heart of everything you do. So as salespeople, or if you're business owners and you employ salespeople, the customer should be the first thing we think about. It needs to run through everything. Every interaction we make, every time we sell, every time we market. So when I'm thinking of my best customer, whenever I put a post on LinkedIn, I've got her in mind. Whenever I want to think about advertising or networking, I'm thinking, is she at this networking event? A similar type of client every time, because sales is huge, marketing is huge. But when you bring it down and when you start focusing on that one person and be laser sharp in terms of who you want to get to in terms of getting more of that best customers, it makes sales easier, it makes marketing easier. And this is the golden triangle that I mentioned at the beginning, because none of them work without the other. So you can't market if you don't have a customer. You can't sell if you don't have a customer. Unless you've got a good marketing campaign, your sales falls down. But if you think about your customer all the way through, every time you put that marketing campaign together, every time you go out to sell, if you think about your customer and think about making things better. And this is built on the missing link, the customer experience. So this is what I bang on about on LinkedIn. I talk about the customer journey. I talk about the customer experience and how you make that person feel every time you do an interaction with them. So the customer journey. If you Google customer journey, this is what you get. This isn't something that I made up, but it's something that I'm passionate about. There are 6 stages to the customer journey, which I've broken down into 3, which I'll talk about next. There's awareness. So this is about being in the right place at the right time. it's consideration. So now I've got a need. Now I'm starting to look. Where am I going to look? Generally a website. Then there's the trial. That's the stepping stone. And quite often what people do on social media, which is the awareness piece, they need to sell. And that's where they fall down. We need to sell the trial. We need to sell the phone call. We need to sell the webinar. We need to sell the audit or the review. After your stepping stone, you've got purchase. And that's that lovely onboarding, that lovely welcome window, as I call it. Those milestones where you bring them on board and they realise they've made a good decision. That my accountant, my solicitor, my plumber, didn't work. They didn't act like the way this guy or this woman's acting. That lovely onboarding piece at the beginning. The next bit is retention. So this is the customer care. This is when the customer experience really, really kicks in. But it's also things like your complaints procedures. What happens when that best customer isn't happy? How early on is that flagged up, and what can you do about it? And then the best thing, the advocacy. What we want to do is create an army of advocates internally and externally. How do we get people shouting great things about us, which takes it right to the top of where being in the right place at the right time, but saying the right things. So things like case studies, testimonials, 5-star Google reviews. If you've ever been in front of Nick and he starts talking about reviews, he always talks about the 5-star review, because if you put that in someone's mind, that's what they're going to do. So fundamentally, this is what we want people to do. We want them to say good things about us, because there's marketing, there's unmarketing, there's sales, and there's unsales. What we want to do, we want to keep them in this seamless journey so they move from one stage to the next. And as I said earlier, it needs to run through every touch point. Everyone within your business needs to understand there is this customer journey, and no matter what you do at the beginning, it has to run through, or this is where at each stage they can fall off a cliff. So as I said, I broke this down into 3 just to make it really easy if you can't remember the other points. So you have to impress at the beginning of the customer journey to attract them in. So whatever content you're putting out on social media, what your bio looks like, who your network is, what are you doing to impress, to attract more of your best customers? And then there's the ignite. How do you get them over the line? What's that stepping stone? What do you do when you onboard these people? How are you making them feel at this point? I've made such a good decision. I'm so glad I've moved over to this new supplier. So this is about converting them, but getting them at that point to retain as a customer. And this is when we really look after them. Now, indulge might sound like a big word, and you might be thinking, how can I indulge all my customers? But if you just think of it back to the customer experience and how you really, really look after them, you will have more chance of retaining these customers. And that's what we want. We want to hold on to them. We want to upsell. We want to cross-sell. We want to keep those best customers, and we want them to shout great things about us. And this needs to run through everything you do, every member of your team. So if I see someone networking and I expect to pick up the phone, I expect that to carry on through. So I remember a builder in one of my B&I groups. He was a daft lad. He was always making people laugh. But when he came to my house to do us a quote, he turned up. His van was immaculate. He looked smart. It was, he did the whole of that meeting brilliantly, and I was quite shocked because the front end, it wasn't seamless, and that's what we need to do. So every touch point and everyone within the business just needs to think of those 2 words, the customer experience. I'm going to give you 2 stories, and Nick will recognise these stories. I'm going to go back to the client that I mentioned before and the £20,000 they were about to spend on radio advertising. What we noticed, there was a flaw. There was a flaw in how they took the inquiries. The inquiries were coming in. The inquiries weren't a problem. It was how the sales team were handling them. So at the beginning of lockdown last year, they split the sales team into 3. So as the inquiries were coming in, the sales team were handling them. They had an after sales team, and they had an aftercare. Yeah, so the after sales made sure that the deliveries were on time. The aftercare made sure they were happy. Just that simple process, splitting one team into 3. How do you think their customers felt? So they got through, the deliveries improved, the stock improved, the warehouse improved, and their reviews improved, and the complaints went decreased. So this, you can imagine their customers were happier than they had been before if they'd spent the money on the radio advertising and it had hit a wall. Another one of our clients do big industrial doors. And when we had a 2-day webinar with them, and we had engineers, we had operations, we had sales, marketing, estimators, all on this call over 2 days. And everyone was bringing their ideas in to get more money, to upsell, to cross-sell. When I asked them what their best customer were, I remember the MD gave me a value of £80,000. When I turned it round and said, what would happen if you lost that best customer? Well, you'd lose more custom, your reputation. We may have to lose somebody. Yeah, so now you're looking at jobs. So what we got them to do was to focus on retention, the indulgence, the account management. So once they fixed those things, they were able to hang on to more of their best customers at £80,000, but also they got those customers to shout great things about them. And then we introduced one more thing. We got the engineers to take out brochures in the vans. So when they'd finished the door and the customer was over the moon, at that point, that was when they could go in to upsell and cross-sell, not 6 months later when they had a happy client. So when they could sell them more doors, more industrial windows, they had a happy client and had more customers and they had more business. Because this is why, this is that big powerful number. This 92% of consumers report that a word of mouth recommendation is the top reason they buy. You go to a restaurant, open it up in your area, you don't go for an advert, you go because your mate said it's nice or you've asked somebody. That's what we're focusing on for. We're focusing on that word of mouth, and that word of mouth comes from because you've given them the best customer experience that you can. So just wrapping up, because I can see Nick is getting a bit tipsy. So this is what it's about for me. This is about, if you think you are giving 10 out of 10, you need to turn that dial up to 11. You need to make every interaction count. You need to make it relevant, and you need to make it memorable. I talk about this fizz moment. So anybody who's been on my workshop, it's that feeling, that fizz, that bottle of wine on a Thursday night, or that first bottle of beer of the week. It feels good, and that's what we want for all our customers to think. I love working with this business. They are brilliant. They really look after me. In fact, I'm going to tell everyone how amazing they are. We need to fill the gaps like the door company did, and we need to spot those opportunities to make more money, to make more customers, get them to shout great things about us. So this is one of my clients, one of my best customers. This is Sarah. Sarah has her own HR company. I do a marketing strategy session with her team at the beginning of this year. When she said this was music to my ears. We look at everything we do and we work out how we make things better. I'm sure we can all do that. We can all look at that, how we attract, how we convert, how we retain, golden triangle, and how we make things better. So this is the homework that I mentioned at the beginning, what I'd like you to do. So if you've got that person written down, the name of your best customer, I want you to have that in mind at every sales sprint. Don't think marketing huge. Don't think sales huge. I want you to think of that one customer because we want more of them, right? I want you to walk in their shoes. So how did they get to know you? Was it on social media? Was it network? And how did they get to like you? Was it the content that you were putting out, or the way you said you could fix their problems? And how did they get to trust you? Why are they a customer now? So I want you to walk in their shoes of how they became a customer and why they're still a customer of yours and why they would tell everybody that you're brilliant. And I want you to make things better. So if there's one thing that you can do today, what can you do that you can make that whole customer journey better by giving them a better customer experience? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my golden triangle. Like I said, you can't do one without the other. We sell, we market, we give them the best customer experience so they go on to tell others, and we get to that 92% word of mouth recommendation. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you took some snippets away that you can put into your business. I think, Russell, we've got a couple of minutes for questions. Am I right?